Welcome back, Warriors. Here we are on part two of what to expect in basic training. Here we have a few stories, we have a few anecdotal evidence to show that maybe the Air Force is a bit easier than other people's.
Ain't no maybe.
No maybes. There's no maybes. So, picking up where we left off, I was going through in April of '04. uh, going through basic training. I can't tell you how many push-ups we did. It seems like a million. Um, they were all about putting us under the stress, and maybe that's something we can compare later, like the being in a war, two wars actually, versus yours, which was just the Cold War. So anyway, we also had mine was 8 weeks. No, was it 8 weeks or 6 weeks? I don't even remember. That's how important basic training actually is.
I know mine was 6 weeks.
So, um, I didn't expect to like they make you do different leadership things throughout. There's element leaders, there's dorm chiefs, there's all sorts of different things that you can do to show your leadership, whatever. And I was surprised at myself to see, what type of stuff they brought out of me in basic training.
Uh huh.
Um, I mean, we did a lot of PT, a lot of the physical training. It was, and we got honor flight, which is some sort of, hey, that's cool. You're the best flight of this particular week's graduating 10 flights or some dumb stuff. I thought it was cool again at the time, but
So they still did that. 'Cause they're doing the same thing where I went.
okay, so it wasn't some new thing that
No,
okay.
it was
Woo.
meaningless, but still, yeah,
Um,
honor flight.
but it was I tried to go into it knowing that I was getting paid to do it. So treat it like a job, not like something else. Like don't yell at your boss, and this term the training instructors. Um, just just do it because it is your job, and I'll just leave it at that. So going through those 6 weeks, it was definitely they made you feel the war that could be upon you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, though they were never specific about the jobs that actually do get deployed a lot, they made it seem like, hey, this is wartime. You boys better. We were all male flight. Flight is like a company to the army, just different verbiage. So us in the flight are like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? Is this even a smart thing? Probably similar to the actual storyline in Full Metal Jacket. Like we're going over to a place and people are dying there. Now Vietnam is much different than Afghanistan and Iraq. I give them that. Um, I wouldn't understand. I wasn't there, kind of thing. So we were feeling the added pressure for
Mm-hmm.
that. Uh, I think it brought out a lot of good stuff in all of us, me specifically, since I can talk to myself about it. Um, what type of things? Because you said you had children go through the army, I believe you said. So, uh,
Yeah.
did they have any stories? Did they
I
tell you anything? Did you get the phone call of, I'm so scared?
basically, I could tell you they both came out from my perspective different people after going through basic training.
Really?
My
Okay.
daughter probably gave me a little more detail to what she went through, but listening to it, it was a lot more strenuous than what we had to do. There was one particular case where you had to hop from one pole to another
Oh
while in
wow.
full kit holding a rifle, and she slipped off that pole and hit her back and really Probably, I
Ouch.
think she really thought she injured herself. But in the Army, it's kind of like, well, you could sit there and be medically discharged, but you're going to be here for several months before we let you go. And you put through, it's not a comfortable time spending there being waiting to be medically discharged.
Yeah, no.
Or you could be encouraged by your people in your platoon to go through with it. And she pushed through and she made it. That's why I was jokingly talking about the confidence course that the Air Force went through. That was an actual pass or fail thing they had to go through in the Army.
Oh, wow.
And it's something they trained for, something they built up to, it's something they had to pass to graduate through. People were breaking legs. People were getting actually injured. Like I said, I cracked my heel. That was probably the worst injury in the entire, all the the flights that went through when I went through basic training. People just were not getting hurt. It just didn't happen. Just that my body particularly was falling apart. So, basically, I think theirs was 8 weeks long, 8 to 9 weeks or whatever it was. And, and my daughter definitely packed on some muscle, that was for sure. But it made them different people. It didn't, I don't think it soured their desire to be in the military at first. But as they went through into their particular jobs, they started to become a little disgruntled and all that. And I think they're coming around to both where, like one actually went to our career field, my son, and my daughter. She's actually thinking about sticking in a little bit longer.
Oh.
In a previous video, we talked about, once you hit that 10-year mark, would you make it a career? Maybe you should consider making it a career.
Okay.
I don't know. So, the basic training in the Army, I can tell you, it was a lot harder process to get through, and the Army had it where it's very advantageous to push through no matter how injured you are, because if you don't get injured, you're going to regret life even more. It's like, okay, sorry, let's continue on the next flight home and go home. No, they stood there several months doing the crappiest details you could think of before they let you go home. And actually, I got the sense that those people who were medically discharged wish they just pulled through, because they could have been on to their next assignment months ago if they just pushed through.
Yeah.
So, I know for a lot of people back then and even now, the Army was a last resort before they went into a life that probably really took them downhill and went to a life of some direction and all that. Basically, so that's what I heard about basic training. It confirmed, but I already knew about Air Force basic training. It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's basically in processing. From what you're telling me, it sounds like basic training by necessity had to get harder because people were starting to go outside the wire.
Sure.
Weapons qualifications. I mean, we didn't talk about that.
Oh.
Weapons
yes.
qual is that could you pick up an M16 and I don't think we even qualified in the M9. It was just the M16. You went through the class. Can you pick it up? Can you hold it in a white box and squeeze the trigger and hit it? There was no pass or fail. As long as you could actually count the bullet holes on the big white target. Now there's a silhouette, and you could actually get marksman and expert and all that.
Oh, okay.
But you didn't have to. Was that the same case when you went through?
No, you had to qualify. Not in terms of like marksman, because when you and I say you qualified for marksman, that is like a ribbon that you get on your ribbon rack saying I am a really good shooter. One of the other guys that were going through EOD school with me, he got his marksman the first time, but he was from Montana, and he's been shooting guns all of his life. So me being socialist Californian, I've never shot a gun. I did have to have some what they called remedial training. I wasn't that good, but I will say 4 years later, I did get marksman on my rifle, so I'm not totally bad.
Basically,
just
marksman mean is they had a silhouette, and I think for M16 you had these these. I think it was a total of 10 silhouettes. I can't remember, but
They're all different sizes.
Yeah, if you hit all of those within a certain amount of number of bullets, you got marksman. But if you hit the white piece of paper, no matter what, when I went through, it was just to go through the motions. If you could shoot an M16 without shooting someone else or yourself,
That's important.
You basically passed when I went through basic training. Sounds like there's actually some kind of skill involved when you went through.
Well, I don't ever want to say that I was skillful with firearm, but yeah, it did. And there was other individuals who really disliked firearms. I don't want to try to put in whatever, but they had the hardest time doing it because not only had they not had the practice, so they were going into it blind, similar to me, but unlike me, conscientious objector comes to my mind, and that's not really what it was. They just didn't like guns, and they couldn't get past the brain part of that. Like, look, you join the military, part of the military is shooting guns. It's just what happens. In fact, other services, they do weeks of weapons training, not just, 4 days or whatever it was in the Air Force. Like, come on, people. But it really seems that we all are getting more proficient in the coming out of basic training, getting more proficient at shooting. Did either of your children have marksmen when they graduated?
They never told me if they did or didn't.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not even sure how the Army did that. Now the Army, they made you train through multiple weapons. I think they still make you train on throwing hand grenades. We couldn't even think about that.
No.
So yeah, they had to be trained on multiple weapon systems and all that. There's a pass or fail. I don't remember if you get marksman or not. One thing I want to ask is, I don't remember if you brought it up or not. I talked about the joke of a confidence course that we went through. Did you guys have something similar when you went through basic training?
Probably the same course itself, though maybe different toys on it that you had to do. But yeah, there was, swinging across the not mud pit, the water pit that they have. So if you
Yeah, we did that too. Yeah.
So to me, it was aptly named confidence course. It wasn't some of the more feeble did not do well. They didn't have a lot of confidence, I guess. But it was, I want to attribute my ease to my size, and I had already, I was a young kid going all crazy, so I climbed trees, I was doing all that. It just seemed like second nature to me.
Was it pass or fail for you?
I don't remember anybody failing. I don't remember if there was a pass or fail, but from the fact of not remember anybody failing, that gives me the thought of they may have said it was pass or fail, and you guys failed or something, but nobody fell back into another flight like you said earlier.
Yeah.
On the different video. Nobody did that, at least for the confidence course.
I remember when I went through mine. Mine was a little bit more difficult than what everyone else had to do because I had that cracked heel, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it was on. They had this sheet. I can't remember what it was. They read it, and I took off my boot. I had to show them this rubber insert on my heel that I had to wear, and because you had to report any kind of injury behind it all. And they told me, it says, take those out. If you can't complete this course with those in your foot, you won't complete this course. So I had probably special situation, which means if I can't pass, not even ready to pass, if I can't get through this confident course, I'm probably going to be held back until I in basic training. And I was more terrified of that than anything. So they finally decided to let me go. My flight's way ahead of me. So I start doing these things all by myself. And what made that more difficult than what most people go through is we had so many flights going at the same time. So you sit there, you do one obstacle, and then you have to stop and wait in line. So you got a chance to catch your breath.
Sure.
And you stood there for a while if it was your turn to go over, and you got to watch other people do it. I didn't have that. I would run to the next obstacle and immediately have to do it. Then run to the next
Ooh.
obstacle and immediately have to do it. But I finally caught up to my flight. I've done 3 or 4 obstacles and I was completely winded. Not to mention my heels are killing me. But that's what made it sort of a challenge. But then again, like sort of a challenge. I saw people being allowed to run around the outside of the wall if they didn't have to, they couldn't go over or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what it did for my confidence or anybody's confidence, especially if there's no pass or fail for it. But it was like the kinder, gentler way of saying, the obstacle course, physical training you had to go through. Whereas the Army, you better get through it. If you get injured, you still better get through it.
Oh man. Well, geez. And something that brought this particular subject to our minds was I had talked to another guy earlier, and he was telling me he went through Air Force basic training in '94, and he didn't have to do any of the PT. His test was the bicycle test. Whereas, if you want to laugh, please look up the Air Force bicycle
Ergo
test.
cycle.
Focus. And there's some other things that he had mentioned that I just kind of looked at him like, I can't imagine not getting yelled at in basic training. I saw that on Full Metal Jacket. What are you talking about?
I could tell you, I got yelled at. We were able, like I said, to do push-ups. And what the things that just recently stopped and doing, my TI sit there and they had the brims of their hat. They could sharpen the brims and then push it against your forehead while they were yelling at you.
Whoa.
Stabbing to your forehead. They just recently got rid of that, but he actually did that while I went through. Before I went through, the TI that was having charge of a flight actually was doing that to people. They quit doing that. I can't imagine not yell at you. I mean, the whole point of basic training, regardless of what service you went through, was to build you up or break you down and then build you back up again if necessary. People were getting yelled at. People were getting dropped and doing push-ups.
Knife hand. It's just awesome.
I think you told me this guy that you talked to went there a couple of years later. In the ergo cycle, the Air Force had dumped so many millions of dollars to make this work because they were trying to reduce injuries of people hurting themselves while taking the PT test. Now, to get ready for this ergo cycle test, you actually had to do physical training. You had to run. You had to do all kinds of stuff. It was such a horribly unscientifically correct test is that people who could run 2.5, 3 miles with no problem because their heartbeat might be a little bit irregular, they would fail the test, but some fatty who were smoking cigarettes 2 packs a day was passing. And it made no sense. And so I can't remember. I want to say the Air Force pushed this ergo cycle from about 1994 for about 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. Finally found this, okay, this is not working. We're going to make people go back and do a physical test. So they did 1 year. I was actually in my first Korea. They did 1 year of testing people or evaluating people. They weren't testing. They want to see how many push-ups you could do per minute, how far you can run in 1.5 miles, sit-ups, and they were going to take that average and start making that the standard. And there are so many people that was so ridiculously out of shape, and that standard was so low.
Ooh.
And they had to keep building it up. Where, at least when I got out 10 years ago, it was a legit test. People were, especially the weight measurement. That was probably the one that people had the hardest time passing, the weight measurement.
This guy right here.
You could run like a Giselle. You could run like a or do push-ups like a He-Man, sit-ups like a He-Man. But if you couldn't pass that weight measurement test, it was like, I can't remember, it was a 39 or something like that.
40 inches.
Yeah, you were failing the test regardless of what else you did.
I could bench press 350, run 1.5 miles, no problem, and I was failing because I'm a big dude. Like, I'm not, I was fat once, but I'm huge. When I was in the military, I was a lot more muscular than I'm even now. I've lost a lot of that. But I just, no matter how cut I was, like you could see my abs or whatever, my waist wasn't smaller than 40 inches just because
Right.
I had some muscle, and it just
One quick question: did they try to incorporate the BMI test for those who had a big waist compared to your neck measurement or something like that? I know they tried to do that for a while too.
there were mentions, rumors about those types of things, but I was never graced with that. I think I would have passed a lot better doing that particular scheme, that testing measurement,
Sure.
rather than like you said it. People who were smokers could pass this bicycle test first time, no problem, because their heart rate immediately got up. They did 5 minutes or whatever it was, and their heart rate just stood there.
Right. And to be
And
clear, it was not a bicycle test. It was a stationary bike.
yes,
You weren't riding around on a bike. You were a stationary bike, checking your heart rate, checking your breathing, how many beats per minute compared to how much oxygen intake you were taking, to determine if you were in good shape or not. It was a total embarrassing joke.
it sounds very scientific, but once you actually get into the science, it's not scientific at all.
No.
So, is there anything else that we want to put out there into the ether to see?
I wish we could tell about what basic training is currently like today. I would imagine it's closer to what you went through, because we're still taking lessons learned from the combat deployments everybody was doing.
Sure.
Hopefully, we're still applying. It's a little bit more physically strenuous. Hopefully, they never bring back that stupid bike again.
Old technology. Get rid
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. Basic training to me needs to be old school for particular purposes of make sure you capacity ready to perform well in the military. Air Force went the wrong way, but I think they finally got it back at least. I'm never going to say it's as strenuous as the other services. I don't know how many weeks it even is now, but thank God they made it better than when I went through.
Well, from all of us to all of you, hopefully this can help you guys if you're joining the military, to what to expect from individuals who have gone through such things and have lived to tell the tale. So, thanks a lot, guys. Like, subscribe, sharing things with other people would be great too. From all of us to all of you, bye bye.